excited.
Shall we? All right. This meeting of the Trophy Club Charter Review Commission is called to order. It's October 28, 2019. Time is 7 p.m. Present, we have Dave Edstrom, Rhylan Rowe, Lou Pippery, Timothy Patterson, Dennis Sheridan, Danny Mayer, Bruce Dale, and Jared King. Kevin is not here at this time. Citizen presentations. Citizens are allowed 4 minutes to address the commission regarding an item over which the commission has policy or oversight authority as provided by Texas law, the ethics law, the ethics order, or other policy order. And we don't have anybody signed up. We'll go to agenda item number 1. This is considered to take appropriate action regarding the October 15th, 2019 Charter Review Commission minutes. Anybody have any comments, questions, want to make any changes?
Make a move, we approve the minutes.
All right.
I will second.
All right. Mayor motioned and Rhylan seconded. All those in favor, raise your hand. It's unanimous. Would like to, Holly, thank you very much for the minimal abridgment. You've heard my language before on that stuff, okay? So, moving right along. Agenda item number 2. This is receive an update from staff liaison, and we'll hear from our fire chief. I don't know, are you the fire chief or the assistant or the?
I don't know what I am anymore. I'm a staff liaison.
Now, am I supposed to say, give your name and address and stuff? All right. Regarding the direction from council at their October 22nd, 2019 council meeting, and all yours.
Right. Good evening, Chairman and Commissioners. Tonight, just kind of wanted to give you a brief. It's going to be very brief because there was really no action taken at council. Your council liaison, Mr. Schaffner, talked to the council this last week or at the council meeting, asking if anybody had any motions that they wanted to bring forward before the commission, and no motions were made, no votes were taken, so there was no action given. Mr. Schaffner asked each of the council members to talk to their appointed liaisons to the board, or I'm sorry, to the commission, if they had anything in particular that they wanted brought up, and it would be brought up in that manner. And that's the only report that I have.
Okay, thank you. One of the things that was just mentioned in briefly was that the council should appoint someone to fill the vacant council seat versus having a special election. And it was very briefly discussed, some for it, some against it. The other one, let me just kind of say that since they didn't have anything for us per our resolution and by majority vote, those who were appointed by a council person, if the council person wants to approach us, they can do so in a couple of ways. One, ask you to say, hey, bring this up. Whether or not you identify it as their comment or not, that's your decision. Or this is a public hearing, they're welcome to come talk to us as it is. Okay? Thank you. Going on to agenda item number 3. This is discussion of previous charter elections. It was brought up last meeting that we wanted to see what was on the ballot and have that information for history. Lou, I think you had made that comment. Or about having the information from the ballots? Never mind.
From the previous elections.
You know, what was controversial, what wasn't, so
yeah.
All of the polls.
My opinion of what this is it's insufficient. It's ballot wording, it's only headings. It doesn't reveal what the proposition said or does or was supposed to do. For example, in our Article 3, Section 304, It says that items D and E were changed and they concern vacancies. But the amendment C added D and E had to do with 3-year terms. I had no idea why or whatever, nor did I have the time to go back and look. So nice to have this, but in the meantime, I think it's heading its own. All right, going around. Dave, comments on this agenda item?
Comments on what?
We're on the agenda item number 3, previous charter.
Yeah, no, I don't have anything. I didn't learn anything from reading them.
All right, Tim?
No comments.
Bruce?
No comment.
Rylan?
Not at this time.
Lou?
No, I didn't get anything from reading them.
Danny?
No, sir.
Derek? Okay. Do you have one?
I don't have them with me.
No, but you do have,
I do have them.
okay.
I get in my notebook that I brought last time, but I've created a new notebook, so I don't have.
I did not make a copy of it. I sure would like to do it.
What I can do is I can go back and, let me say no before I.
All right, no, just it's a sideline. I'd like to see it. if you
I'll
had-
follow up with you and get you copies of whatever you want out of the history, because I have it from each of you, you know.
Right. And this was a discussion item, so there's no motion or anything necessary, so we're going to go on to agenda item number 4. This is discussion of and take appropriate action regarding Article 1, form of government and boundaries of the Town of Trophy Club charter. Holly or Dave, any comments?
Just my email on 1.04 that went out last week, that the annexation section does not need to be changed, just it says our authorities are pursuant to any state laws of the state of Texas now or hereinafter enacted. So as it's amended, as well as with that.
Right. So that handled that question that came up last time.
And that's down the road here, but it also addresses eminent domain in Article 2.
Okay. Any comments, Jared?
No comments.
Danny?
No, sir.
Lou?
Are we looking at just 1.01 or?
We're on just Article 1. We're going to take them one at a time.
The whole article?
Yeah.
Well, I got when I saw David's note, I wondered as I went through the whole document, who's going to check to make sure we're compliant besides annexation to all of those state laws that are listed in the charter? Is that
It's a good question on I don't know if it's relative to what we're doing, but it's a question.
I guess I got a two-part one. Number one, do we have to do it? To have to check it? All right. Number two.
Broad scope view and an individual section.
Okay.
Well, it does require that it be published, so
Yeah.
there would be public review, if nothing, you know, if no other.
No, I was looking at the state laws themselves.
I see.
Okay, how do we match with the state laws if they change or something?
You want to make sure it's legal, or do you want to make sure, or you want it to be verbatim?
Well, no, both. Is it legal, then are we compliant? Are we legal, and are we compliant?
Okay. You can be legal in some instances and not match the state law.
Well, I didn't expect a direct match.
No, I've read through. I don't have any recommended changes for Article 1.
Okay, Bruce?
Nor do I.
Tim?
None for Article 1.
Dave? Okay. I'm going to make just a comment that has to do with the packet that we received. And I don't know how the rest of the commissioners feel, but I want to have the Article 1 or whatever article is referenced with the agenda. I don't want to have to go over here to another packet. So what I did was I took the charter and I broke it apart. So this is my Article 1 all at one time. That's why I'd like to see the packets.
Okay, we can definitely do that. We didn't know if it would cause confusion having it broke up, because we talked about having.
No, I know. I'm also using my copy, not yours,
Yes, sir.
which I said was not to do or whatever. Okay. But that was something that I had an issue with at first, trying to figure out how to keep just Article 1. All right. This is a action item. I'll take a motion to pass this Article 1 without change.
I'll make a motion to move on without making any recommended changes to Article 1.
I'll second.
Motion by Rhylan, second by Lou. All those in favor, raise your hand. Unanimous. On to agenda item number 5. Discussion and take appropriate action regarding Article 2, powers of the Town of Trophy Club Charter. The staff, any comments, questions? I know, Dave, you already mentioned eminent domain. Okay. Any questions, changes, any comments, Dave?
None.
Tim?
None.
Bruce? Rylan?
None at this time.
Luke?
None.
Danny?
No, sir.
Garrett?
sir.
The only thing I'll make a comment is I don't like eminent domain without restrictions. This allows commercial use. All right, I will have the motion.
I make a motion, we approve pass number 2 with no changes.
All right,
I'll second it.
seconded by Bruce. Motion by Danny. All those in favor? Okay. And by the way, I do have on my notes to ask the public to speak before we vote, but there's no public. I apologize, Mike, but if you want, you speak up first, okay? All right, going on to agenda item number 6, discussion of and take appropriate action regarding Article 3, the Council of the Town of Trophy Club Charter. I will start. Staff, comments, any? Holly?
No, sir.
Nope. And we've already heard from the council. So Jared, any comments, any questions, anything in here you want to discuss? This is just Article 3, but it's the entire article.
No, I've read through it and I'm okay.
All right, Danny?
Yes, I have a few. And most of them reflect back to 3.19. No, I'm sorry. 3.1. Well, let me just start over here. There's a few things. We've had some discussions and some problems. Let's talk about compensation first. I'm throwing these out for discussion. I'm not for or against at this point. But we had some discussions in the town over council people being on commissions and not being on commissions. And one of the things that made it acceptable was that the council is not a paid position. If this is a big concern to anybody, we could pay the council $1 a year, and that would take care of this conflict that seems to come up from time to time. That's one thing I'd like to discuss.
Before we move on,
Let's stay with that.
can you be specific as to what the conflict?
Well, I remember when it wasn't necessarily the council, but it could have been the council, but when Greg Wilson was elected to the Mud Board, there was a big move to kick him off of the EDC board. Isn't that right, Philip? Is that correct? But because neither one of those positions was a paid position, the state allows that, but it's never come up on the council, but that's just food for thought. If it ever came up, there's really nothing to prevent a council member from being on the Mud Board that I'm aware of.
It could be conflicts.
Because they're both elected?
Yes.
They're both elected and they could deal with the same issues.
But read that, because I think it says if they're not, neither, and see, the Mud Board is no longer paid.
There is a prohibition if you're paid by one and not the other.
Right.
But there's also a prohibition if they're dealing with the same issues.
Okay.
But yeah, you're saying that's an elected office also, and
Two elected offices.
you can't do that.
Right.
I agree. I
That is
just want to make sure I
Under state law.
understand.
Yeah,
It's not in the charter or ordinance.
Yeah, section 3.02 under qualifications, I believe, it makes clear that if you have another elected office, you can't run for
That's
council.
specifically says that.
But
I've never seen
And the other one I
but to
want
Danny's
to
point, you could serve on a board if you were appointed.
I want to make just one comment about compensation. I don't think that we probably ought to consider paying council people a lot. But I do think it would be worthwhile to give them some kind of a token payment for their attendance at meetings and that sort of thing. So I don't know if that's a number like $200 a meeting or some number. But I just don't, I would feel good about the idea of doing something in the way of some sort of compensation. That also then makes that a paid, if you will, makes it by definition a paid position.
Well, I would say to that, for myself, having been on the council, I would never want to take money for that position. I like volunteer government and volunteer service, and I think that, I just think it's better. I think, and you don't get accused of things. I mean, I remember the mud board took a tremendous amount of grief for collecting $100 a meeting. And I know that was, and I think it was Bill Rose who
Really?
No, I think he's the one who ended it. I think he's the one who said, I moved, that was like at the first meeting after he was elected, I moved, we do away with that $100. But I know they took a lot of grief over that, and I'd hate to see our council do that.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to see anybody receive anything bad as a result. I just think that it would be just a nice act. And I'm not talking about what you would call pay, because it certainly doesn't pay them for their time. It's just a, you know, I don't know, I just like the idea.
Okay, any other?
Yeah, a couple other things.
Now, carry on compensation for a second.
Okay, all right, I'm off the conversation.
All right, I'm still on.
Having been on the mud board when they were paid a long, long time ago, it was, as long as you were paid per meeting and there was one meeting a month, to me it was a pain, but it wasn't a big deal. It's when we start getting involved in litigations and things like that, now you got bunches of meetings a month, and I can remember sitting there and having votes saying, we don't want to pay ourselves. And then we got to move on because the role was you needed to. So that would be the only caution I would have. I agree with Dave that they ought to get something, call it a rolling expense, then call it whatever you want. But with the time that they put in, right? I would like, I'm caught between, I'd like to stay with volunteer government, but then again, these guys put the time these guys put in, you know.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Does anybody have any statistics on what percentage of council members aren't paid in the state of Texas?
No. We'd have to throw that number together. We don't have it currently.
The other question is there any town in the area that has paid? I'm not talking about,
It's
Fort
between
Worth.
Dallas and Fort Worth with those side, and a lot of them end up not accepting it as a tax return.
None of our immediate neighbors do.
I don't know any small towns.
Past our immediate neighbors.
Okay, all right. Rhylan?
Yeah. Yeah, generally on principle, I would oppose it. I think I fall in line with Danny for one. I think it creates sort of another layer of things for people have enough misconceptions about how town government works when they're not here. And I think even the specter of even a nominal amount like Dave suggested just adds even more complexity to something that's already made unnecessarily complex because some people simply aren't as familiar with it as maybe we all wish they were. Secondly, I would remind the commission that if we workshop an idea and we all ultimately make a motion and approve or recommend it to council, it still has to pass two more hurdles, the first being the council, but then also voters. And I think it'll be a cold, cold day in hell before Trophy Club voters approve a proposition that mentioned the word compensation, regardless of amount. So
Good point. My mind was not working.
Okay, well, this is part of what the discussion's about.
That's why it's fun to talk about. So on both principle and practical matter, I would recommend we not move forward with that.
Okay, Bruce?
Well, I agree with that. I think that it's a talking point that we don't need to have out there. I agree with those comments.
All right, and my comment would be, if you were to make it part of the charter, you're not going to put a dollar amount in, you're just going to put a whatever. And there's no way that that's going to stay nominal or minimal or whichever. So, and I agree with how I would vote in the ballot. So, okay, then we're going to leave it for discussion purposes, and if it comes into the motion later, okay?
I guess one question I would throw out there is,
Yeah.
like, you know, like the email we got was, I think it was 25 megabytes, the packet. It was a big email, right? So, you know, again, I don't support compensation, but is there some kind of an expense, you know, your data plan or something that you're using for town business?
They can get expenses paid. You want to explain how? Or do they? Has anybody requested it?
That is generally for council members that are going on education trips. So any training that they might go to per diem associated with the training is generally all the compensation that I've ever seen. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Shaw.
I think that you can get expenses if you really thought you had incurred expenses. Just for myself, I would not take compensation. And I don't think that there's anybody on council that is clamoring for compensation.
I can't turn in for my toner on my copier.
We'd be happy to print you anything.
How many of these did I print? Okay, all right.
But
Good question.
to answer your question, yes, you can get expenses. paid.
Yeah,
You can have expenses reimbursed.
It's in here about me reimbursed.
Yes.
Okay, all right, passing compensation, let's see,
If you want to,
or are we gonna stay with Danny and go to your other item?
do we want to just?
I'll go through mine.
Yeah, let's stay with Danny, go through that.
All right, I want to go to 319B. An abstention vote. It says that if someone abstains from voting, that the official minutes shall register that as a no vote.
You're on 319B.
You're on 320, 320.
I'm sorry, 320B.
Okay, got it.
Sorry, I can't read. I just had cataract surgery, so you got to bear with me. That an abstention vote should be recorded as a no vote, and I think that it should be recorded in the minutes as an abstention, because that's what it is. It's not a no vote. And I think if we're going to put in the minutes what actually happens at a council meeting, we have a yes vote, and we have a no vote, and we have an abstention vote, and we should record it that way. And I don't think that an abstention vote should ever be counted as a no vote, like even when the council votes. If someone abstains, they currently count it as a no vote, but it shouldn't be counted as a no vote. It should be counted as an abstention, and then whatever the majority of the remaining would be. So that's my thing on abstentions.
Okay. Rhylan?
Yeah, I completely agree. I read through all 3 articles, and honestly, this was the only item that I thought I might bring up. Having been in that position, when you abstain, you're doing so for a reason. And it always seemed odd to me to try and put a square peg in a round hole. I think, let me ask David real quick, looking at 320 Section B, would it be, if we were to just strike Section B altogether, then at that point, there would be no specificity as to how the minutes should be recorded?
Correct, unless council adopts something about.
In their
this
rules of procedure. Which I would,
That's kind of where
and ultimately they can do that anyway, as long as it's not in conflict with the
But
charter.
yet, as it stands now, they can't adopt a rule that
Correct.
contradicts.
To describe what Danny just.
But like
yeah.
what you're saying, if you do away with B altogether,
They could.
they could adopt it.
Or you could just modify it, so
Or
perhaps
not.
it would be more
Or not.
appropriate, depending on, to modify the language to actually just specify.
Is there any superseding or state law or something above us?
No, this is a bit of an unusual term for a charter. Really, this probably should fall under the section that says council shall adopt rules of procedure, and then you leave the specifics to the body That's a more living document, I would say.
So am I hearing that this would go under, we would just put this over to just delete it totally, like Ryan said, or to put it as far as action requiring an ordinance?
I think I would delete it. I'm not recommending what y'all should recommend.
No, I know, I'm just asking different things.
I think it's more consistent with the charter or a constitutional type document to take this out and leave it at council adopting their own
Right.
resolution.
And that touches on a good point. We're going to see, as we read through these articles, we're going to see a pattern emerge every now and then, which is that sometimes the charter is maybe a little more granular than what it would be ideally. So if we do see something, in my opinion, if we do see something that the board is angling towards maybe modifying, I would look towards doing it with an eye to what David just described, which is to sort of make it more general and a little more mute. That way, but still accomplish the goal. That way, it's easier to manage in the future.
Greg Howard with the nuts and bolts or whatever.
Yeah. So anyway, but sorry to go a little off, but yeah, Danny, I completely.
They operate off Robert's rules and things like that as they when they run their meetings. And I know there's things in Robert's rules about abstaining and things like that.
But right
So
now,
I agree
this
with
is
you.
wrong.
There's no need for it to be in here.
Yeah, right now, even if they adopt Robert's rules, whatever it says about abstention, this is control.
This would supersede it. As long as it exists in the charter.
How would this go for a vote to citizens if we just take it out?
Well, any changes?
Well, my thought is that we're going to have a motion. We're going to take, and the motion is going to include a number of things. It can include compensation. And after we get through going through the entire charter, we're going to have another one that's just going to concentrate on the different things we discussed and passed, and try to, edit them to be the proper words, okay? And so we're now just formulating a big joint list of what to talk about later.
Well, I think what I got out of our first meeting and with what this group is looking at, nobody's looked at this thing really since 2009. Right? So we're looking at 10 years. I mean, it's a living document. It needs to be reviewed and brought up
Oh,
to date,
sure.
From time to time.
Yep.
So I think that's one point when anything we bring out to a vote, that we make darn sure we put a preamble that said, this is what we did. We did not get in here on any witch hunt to change anything.
No.
We reviewed it.
Well, okay, but once again, what we determined today is not going to be what was going to go in the final report. It's going to help us synthesize this big 44-page document into a couple of manageable, here's 15 items, here's 20 items, or no items.
So what you're saying is, as we cover off Article 3, we'll make a motion to recommend certain changes to Article 3, and then later we will have individual motions to approve the ballot language as subsequent.
That's right. And in a subsequent meeting, we can take 5 items and say, oh, forget the 4, we're only going to recommend 1.
Okay, but our motion should be to have the town attorney draft the language too.
No, absolutely not. No. Excuse me, Dave.
You have to have the language.
Stop. Well, all right. Right now, we're trying to go through the charter, figure out what items need to be changed or modified or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Then, where I appreciate Dave being here, okay? This is our meeting, this is our commission, this is where to put it down. Dave is to help us with good counsel on what state law is and what's good. Then when we get to the right to report, then we want the attorney in there, because remember, there's whatever we recommend in wording, what the council's going to get and say and modify and pass, and then what the attorneys are going to put on the ballot.
Okay.
I'm not changing it.
No.
I have one question about this one that we're talking about.
Yeah, so we're talking about that 3.20 B.
I clearly understand why a person who has a conflict would abstain. What I don't understand is what are the circumstances? What kinds of circumstances would there be that a person couldn't vote on a measure? And because it bothers me that the person doesn't do their responsibility in effect of voting on the item?
I'll give you my example. It's not can't vote, it's won't vote. When the sound wall was being finalized on 114, I want to say 2016 at some point, TxDOT came to us with several options. We had several residents and several council people that weren't happy with any of the options, so I said I wasn't going to vote in favor of any of them, so I ultimately ended up abstaining from that vote. So an abstention isn't necessarily a prohibition from voting because of some external, circumstance. It's literally a choice not to vote.
Under the rules as they stand in the council right now, if you have a conflict, you actually have to leave the council chamber.
Right.
You can't even sit in and listen to the discussion. And that's not counted as an abstention. So, but,
Have we ever defined what a conflict is?
well, yeah, I mean, yes, there's been a lot of discussion, at least when I was on the council, and I know when Rhylan was on the council, there have been where you're involved with that company, or you have an interest in that company, or you do business with that company, you can't get involved with that vote.
The town has an ethics ordinance or ethics guidelines that are very specific on what a conflict is.
Okay.
But on P&Z, I always considered it, if you had any relationship or any involvement at all, I want to know it. I want to be transparent. So, for example, when Radad came in with the Highlands, I ran it through staff and I said it at the first meeting. I've had dealings with Radad's company. I didn't own it. I'm a real estate broker and a developer. And he's a real estate broker and developer. And, okay, but at least that's transparency. That's, and I was ready to, if something should have come up like that, I would have backed out.
I want to go back to what we talked about with the TxDOT items. If there were one of those items that came to the floor for a vote, and a recommendation, you would either be in favor of it or against it, would you not?
I'd have to go back and watch the tape, Dave, but I mean, I probably sat in 120 council meetings and I abstained from one vote, so there was a compelling reason why I chose not to.
I know, what I'm trying to understand is why someone would abstain. I think,
Yeah.
what is the purpose? Abstaining means I can't make up my mind, I can't, what does it mean?
I can answer that question. I
Okay.
think. I have seen council people abstain because they didn't want to be on record as either approving or disapproving of a touchy subject. They just wanted to be.
And that's what troubles me.
And that's
What troubles me is that now what you're saying is it's political, it has nothing to do with the meat of the subject.
All I'm saying here is it shouldn't be recorded as a no vote. It should be recorded as an abstained vote of what it is. You can't, a person has a right to abstain, but it shouldn't go down as a no vote or be counted as a no vote. It should just be an abstention. We're the only people, by the way, if you read the local charters around here, this is the only town that I have been able to find where an abstention is counted as a no vote.
I'm okay with it, I guess. I still have a very difficult time with the whole subject of somebody being elected to a job to make decisions.
We're not taking, but they still have, the issue here though is as it is right now, they can abstain, and if you weren't told about it, you'd never know, because in the minutes it would say that they said no. You can't remove someone's right to abstain, which you're opposing in some cases the action of abstaining, which I agree with. However, we're only talking about how do we record the actions. We're not talking about the actions themselves.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, this is the philosophical stuff I like to talk about.
You're talking human nature, all right, bear with us. You're talking human nature and politics, and this is a charter.
Okay.
And the two should not be.
Boy, should not.
Yeah.
All right, I didn't mean to shut you down.
No.
Get a little-
I got
Okay.
it.
I agree with Danny. I haven't cutting off Scott Street. I don't know how I missed this. I got notes everywhere else, but I missed this. But in my experience, a continent abstention is a no vote. I don't understand that, right? You either yes, you're no, or if you take Jared's example, it could be that citizens have questions and tech stuff didn't have answers, and I'm gonna abstain until they provide the answers. I can understand something like that.
One of the things that this would do is it force people to make decisions.
It's an extension, and here's why. But
Okay.
but I don't understand why you would go to extension as no. So I support getting rid of the park thing altogether.
I support accident.
Anybody else have anything else to say? All right, moving along to your next item.
Okay, 319. Yes, the council by an affirmative vote of a quorum. Now, this is a conflict, this statement is a conflict to another portion of the charter which says to approve anything, we have to have the majority of the council approve it, not the majority of the quorum. So,
You're talking about the one that says it takes 4 votes?
yeah, it takes 4
You
votes.
get the first line, section 219.
So-
I think it's just a poorly worded.
Well, here's my take on it. And again, I'm gonna go back to why people abstain from voting. I had this happen while I was on the council. Some council members won't show up on a touchy subject. They just don't come to the council meeting because they don't want to be recorded. And so this rule that we have in our town that you have to have 4 votes to approve something should be that if you have a quorum, it should be the majority of the quorum, not 4 votes. Because if you have 2 absentees and you only have 5 people there, or let's say you have 3 absentees and you have 4 people there, one person can absolutely control the whole meeting. They just say no or yes on whatever the majority wants to do. And we've seen that happen in this town. So I would say that everything where it takes 4 votes should be moved to a majority of the quorum that attends the meeting.
So
The voting members.
Can I make one comment on that as well?
Yeah.
I think that that's something that you should seriously look at, only because of resignations. So at one point, I think that we were down 2 members here recently, and so you're talking 4 of the 5 have to vote affirmative for anything to pass. So that's something really to think about.
I just believe that if you have, that the people that take the time to come to the meetings and listen to the proposition and have the discussion, the majority of the quorum should be able to pass anything in this town. And then I'm through.
All right, well, I understand what you said, but how would you word it? What are you trying to do here?
Well,
All right, I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
What are you trying to get to?
I'm trying to get to this. Yes, sir.
Well, what you're saying, what I'm hearing you say, is I think you want to leave 3.19 as it is.
As it is.
But you look at 3.12,
3.12 is where it takes.
it says except as other, it's quorum. Second, third sentence says except as otherwise specifically provided herein, or by law, 4 members of the council shall constitute a quorum for purposes of transaction of business. And then this next phrase, and no action of the council shall be valid or binding unless adopted by the affirmative vote of 4 or more members.
That sentence needs to be struck.
Well, the phrase,
Well, it should be the majority of the quorum.
members of the council shall constitute a quorum of business. Are you talking about removing from the part that says?
No action of the council shall be valid unless adopted by affirmative vote of 4 members of the council. That doesn't need to go, that doesn't need to stay, that needs to go away. You don't need 4, you just need a majority vote of the quorum of attending.
Does this get into the weird rules about you could go be a Whataburger and have a quorum?
No, that doesn't change, that's Texas open meetings.
You can take action if you're not.
We can't change.
I was gonna say,
We can't change that here.
I will.
That's in Austin.
I will provide a little bit of potential unintended consequence that might come from a change like the one Danny's thinking about to section 312. which is you do run the risk potentially, and it is a corner case, but I've seen it happen not in so much as it affected the way a vote would go, because there was ultimately probably still going to be 4 votes no matter what, but in the way, in trying to manipulate a discussion by pushing, I've been on some very united councils and some very divided councils, and at one point I was on one of the most on the same page councils you're going to find in the 34-year history of this town. But we had a pretty sensitive item that someone specifically said at a meeting that they wanted to pick up at the next meeting. They were unable to make that next meeting because of family concerns, but because of some of the other chatter about the item, enough people pushed to have it on the agenda, which only takes 2, or 1 in the case of the mayor, and that individual was consciously left out of the discussion. And if that type of thinking can happen on a very united council, I would have concerns that if you're at a very divided 4-3 council, that you might get some issues.
Yeah, but I would argue that on that, if you have a very united council, you could table that till the next meeting, and when that person's going to return.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
So there's a section in our charter as well, though, that says that any 3 members of council can order a special meeting. So if you had 3 members of council that order a special meeting, the special meeting is convened, you have 1 other council member that shows up, those 3 that order the special meeting could vote in a certain direction without the other council members. It goes along with what Mr. Rowe was talking about. Does that make sense?
That's true, but you could have that, there's one thing that the state of Texas allows now that we didn't used to allow is we can video conference any council member into any meeting now. So even if you're on vacation and there's a special meeting called, you can video conference in and attend the meeting. So I'm going to go back to Philip. I mean, back when you're down council members, it can become almost impossible to pass something. And I strongly urge us to look at doing away where it has to be 4 members of the council, but it should be the majority of the quorum attending.
All right. Wade, explain what you just said again about the 3 members.
So
And where is it? I don't know.
section 3.10.
10. That's right.
In section 3.10, it says the mayor or any 3 members of council may call special meetings by giving notice to the town secretary. So basically 3 members can order a special meeting.
Now, they can order a special meeting, but does that mean they can vote in it? They still need 4 to vote?
You've got to have the 4th person there to call to the
okay,
quorum.
so 3 can call the meeting, but it's going to take 4 to do something.
To actually have the meeting.
Got
Then
it.
the 3 that called the meeting could.
But even if 3 call the meeting, you can't exclude the other 4.
That's true.
So it's not as if those 4 can't make the meeting. My only concern is that when you're down, having been on a council where there's only 5 members, if you have something that comes up, you have to have 4 votes. So you almost have to have a majority that vote, or a supermajority in that case, that vote for an item. And so that's my only concern with the 4 votes requiring passage of anything, is when you're down that many members. I mean, you could get to a point where you only had 4 members and you'd have to be unanimous.
So if I understood correctly, what you're saying, Danny, is that you would delete the word 4 and just the majority of the quorum. So if there were 4 people there, okay, a majority would be 3.
As you look at this whole
And
document,
that's basically what 319 said.
as you look at this document though, right? That language is going to have to be cleaned up throughout the document because it mixes a majority of a quorum and 4 people throughout the document.
Right.
So the whole document needs to be cleaned up.
If this
if we
proceeds,
do
in
that.
other words, Yeah, and that's the other thing, is once we get through tonight in the different stages articles, and we go back through and edit, we also have to be aware of, you change one word in one, and you changed everything in 15 others, okay? So, my part is, who cares? So what if they can't vote, if they can't get something through? A do-nothing government sometimes is better than others. And I don't mean, I'm not trying to be disparaging, I'm just saying that over the history, there's been times that Congress or governments can't get anything done. And we've still survived. So I don't know if I would be saying I'd be in favor of eliminating the word "for" in there, but I'm putting it on our list of items.
Yes, so I think one thing to clarify on 319, this is just where it says the affirmative vote of a quorum. This is just to authorize and require an investigation.
Right. Yeah, but it's mixed throughout.
312 is where it requires 4 votes.
So it sounds like you could do an investigation with only 3 votes, based on, if we read this.
Only if you had 4 people attending.
I think the problem with 319 is the phrase "of a quorum" is spurious, and it actually adds no meaning to the language, because an affirmative vote of the body throughout is already defined elsewhere in the document.
No, but yeah, it is.
So that's where we're getting tripped up.
Well, it says an affirmative vote of a quorum.
Right.
Quorum's already defined as 4.
Right.
Duh.
And an affirmative vote.
I was just using that as an example.
No, I understand.
What I was really talking about was the 4 to pass.
And 3.
No, I didn't say that. And that's why I asked you to clarify that earlier. So, but okay. You're done. Jared, did you have any argument?
No, I think I'm with Danny. I know, when council, maybe not as much in the future, but if there's like things that need to be decided that are very time sensitive. I know in the past there were landowners that wanted to do a transaction by the end of the year, and all the different moving parts to get that done. I would be open to eliminating the language about having 4 members.
Okay.
Rhylan, did you say you like the 4, to keep the 4?
I will. I'm
You would stay.
definitely not. I don't want to disappoint Dave for one. No, I'll come to me. I have some thoughts on it.
Okay. All right, I'm sorry, Jared, do you have anything else?
No, I just remember with the whole breadwinners building, it was the landowners, like, I got it for tax reasons, I want to get this deal done. And I was on the tax incremental committee, and we had kind of last minute meetings just to get things done.
Also, one example that comes to mind is a building that came to us in December. We had a special P&Z meeting in December. We had a special council meeting, December 30th? And to approve it and everything else like that, okay? And the Holiday Inn didn't get built for another 4 years. Yeah, okay. All right, keep moving right along. Lou, what items do you want to talk about?
Danny caught some of mine, so I'll try to be brief here. Under qualifications, and this is going to apply to my document, not only in section 3. If you look under 7, it says if any city member files to become a candidate for another public office, he shall remain resign his currency. There's a bunch of statements like that through here that need to be made gender neutral.
What is gender neutral, Polly?
They, in this case, it would be, they shall resign their
Isn't he
currency to bond.
considered legally
Yes.
gender neutral?
Typically, you have a phrase at the beginning that says, well, we use he, we mean gender neutral, or he, she, but now, I'm not sure how many pronouns we need to include.
Well, okay, so basically, if this became an issue, it would be at the beginning of the document, you put
A definition.
A definition,
Or just
okay.
a quick-
So add a gender neutral, okay. Is that?
I may have to look that up one time.
No,
How about he
I'm
/she? Is that,
At one time, that'd be perfect.
we are in Texas, so.
I know.
Okay.
I'll get you something with title.
What do you say?
I'd be in favor of just using the title, like, for example, in 3.027, if any city council member files to become a candidate for another public office, the member shall resign. And I started with a bunch of he's and his.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's throughout the whole document. Therefore, without going through, because remember, anything we do has got to be a proposition in the vote on the ballot. So if we went through it every time we changed
If
something.
there's 20 he's, there have to be 20 propositions just for the he's.
That's what that, but if we were to add a gender neutral definition up front, that's what I wrote down.
He shall be defined as.
All right. What else you got, Lucas?
Okay, you got that one on 3.03, just an edit note caught my eye. I don't think we ought to have those brackets around the comma after term, right? But that's just a clean up there, right? I didn't know how detailed it was.
303. Now you're going to make me go to your copy of the
We were supposed to get here. It's,
You know what the brackets around?
the comma, I
I think
didn't.
that's a scrivener's error. We might put it.
They should be.
No, if we don't want them there, I think we better just take them out. We're supposed to have to vote on parentheses.
Okay. If we have to vote on them,
I think we'll call it a scrivener's error, take that out.
Okay.
all right.
So I'm going to leave that to the bureaucracy.
You did how many people?
That should just be one of those cleanup things and take those words out. They're just absolutely unnecessary.
I'll look and see if we can use the scrivener's error exception and change he to member. That way we don't have to have 20 propositions on program.
Okay. Well, the other thing I got is under 3.08, powers of the council, down here on A, B, C, D, E, F, I think it is. It says adopt and modify a zoning plan and a building code, including electrical, plumbing, whatever. And my question was, in today's day and age, instead of just saying a building code or whatever, would we be too restrictive on the town if we put in there the current electrical code? I'm behind the times, whatever they're calling it, NFPA, just for that kind of the current level of those kind of things, right? Instead of just saying codes. Just a thought, right?
If you say the current one, currently your building standards commission will probably review the codes and make amendments. And COG actually reviews them and makes a lot of amendments. I think if you adopt the current one through the charter, one, you're kind of interfering with the power of the council to have an open session and vote on it. And two, you're taking away the ability to amend it.
I can tell you they do adopt the current
Yeah.
code. So
Yeah.
Well,
they
they change it to match the town, because there's minor changes, but yes, they do. But the current one is always adopted. The NFPA was every 2 years or so went up when we went through that thing, so. And it was 19, you go, that's it, I'm done.
Okay, Ryan?
Thank you, sir. Yeah, I'll reiterate, I do support the same thing that Danny said regarding recordings in meetings of abstention. David, I think something that makes the charter agnostic to that is probably the more sensible approach. On the number of votes required to get an affirmative vote of council, I don't know, I can kind of go both ways. I can see both sides of it. I think my gut feeling would be to stay with the 4, but I certainly understand the potential benefit for changing that. The one thing that gives me a little extra pause on that is how it looks on the ballot. What it ultimately, as a bottom line, if I'm a voter looking at that, the bottom line I would have seen if this was the 2009 charter and I was just Rhylan voting on something having not sat on council before, I would have looked at that and said, that's going to mean that a fewer number of people can make a potentially large decision. as sort of an outlier when the vast majority of decisions, as we all know, in all practical purposes, 99.9% of votes would come down to 4 people, 4 at a minimum anyway. So my immediate thought as an outside thinker would be, what are they trying to do here? And I know what Philip's thinking, and I know what Danny's thinking, but we've all sat there. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm still probably, would probably prefer to maintain the 4 vote requirement on that.
Any other item? Brad?
No, sir, those are the only.
Bruce?
Yeah, just a few things. Under 308 point D, have we ever had a comeback on, okay, so we asked the council to develop goals and objectives. Do we ever come back and say, how are we doing on that? Do we ever recycle? Do we have a comeback to say, yeah, it's one thing to write down all these goals, but we're going to hold anybody accountable for those goals?
Yeah. Philip, you want to, or Rhylan, you want to make a comment on that?
I got it.
Didn't we lose goals like 25 years ago?
Well, we have long-term goals.
I would say,
And they've been variety.
Accountability, I think, is at the ballot box. You know, if I'm not meeting the goals that are laid out for the town, I think you vote me out. You know, so.
But how do we know that? I mean,
I think that communication is one of the most difficult things we face. If you went around with me and knocked on doors here, and I used to do that in the days when my family was in the politics, and I knocked on every door in this town. And when you go to these doors, people don't have a clue. And we have to figure out a way to better help them understand what the goals are. And we do need, I think, to go back and tell them how we're doing against them.
Yeah.
But I think we as a reporting standpoint, I think the council has done a pretty good job of periodic, certainly on financial. The periodic reviews have been very good. They've been published and all these kind of things. So I don't.
Have we done that though with long-term goals? I mean,
Yeah,
is
I
that
don't
something
see
we've
the
done?
problem so much with the council and the goals. I see the problem with how to communicate it and get people to.
Can I address that? At least when I was on the council, Rhylan and Pelican, every year when I was there, we took the strategy map and we went over that strategy map. We marked off what we accomplished, what we were needing to do, and we added new things as it changed. So, and all of that's recorded in the minutes, and it's recorded in the council videos, and it's available to the public. But I think the council, this council, and along with the town staff and everything, do an excellent job of not only setting goals, but measuring those goals, recording those goals, and each year taking off some things that they've accomplished and adding new ones.
Well, that's good, but should that be a part of the charter?
That is a piece of the operations piece that the town manager reports on every January in a workshop. The town manager is required to report on the goals that we set each year. So every January we have a council retreat in which goals and our progress towards those goals and the opportunity for council to change those at any time is made during that time.
So then, the next question I would have though would be that how do we communicate that to the public?
That too would be an operational issue that we could discuss on our end with our marketing director and that kind of thing. Yeah, we do make that.
Right. Yeah. I can add some context to that. I was going to make the mention that Wade just did, is that a lot of the reset on how do we do comes out in the January cycle of setting new goals, and also in part of the town manager's performance review. Honestly, the question then, to your point, is how does that get packaged out? Dennis mentioned that the mayor will do in his state of the town. He'll hit each one of those goals, and he'll typically respond to each one of those.
The thing I've learned is in government is that when you don't communicate, stuff gets made up.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Sometimes it gets made up even when you do communicate.
Well, I know. You lower that possibility.
Yeah.
Okay?
It gives it a meaning. So
that's a comment I have on that. The other comment I've got is on under that same talk about newspapers. I don't know how many people want to take the newspaper, but I don't. And I don't know what the answer is, but I will say that something besides the newspaper should be in there.
This is state law requires,
The what?
state law still requires us to designate an official newspaper.
Really?
For publishing, publication notice.
Yeah.
things like that.
People don't buy them, but they still have a good log list.
I'm gonna move on from that one. The other 3.13, I think this whole thing can be a bit of a slippery slope if we're not careful. But what's the remedy if somebody doesn't follow that? I mean, I know in my business experience, I've been concerned in the past with people saying, "What? You're the boss, and I want you to, you're going to run your business." But inevitably there is a board member or somebody that would say, "Hey, I need to talk to you about something, and I got a recommendation for you." And sometimes recommendations appear to be not the recommendation, but in fact a do it.
I think in our.
Is there a remedy that we've got that if somebody very blatantly goes out and says, "Hey, you know what? I'm going to talk to the town manager about so and so," what happens?
All right, well, let's go back, because I believe this is addressed here somewhere else. Where does it have that part about the rules, not rules of council?
What?
How to, let's go back first. Give me a second. I don't have this thing memorized.
That's surprising. I really is.
I know. But the,
319, so
I'm thinking, it's got a thing in here that the council regulates itself as far as ethics goes and what, damn it. Or am I thinking of something else?
I think you are required to adopt a ethics ordinance.
You may be thinking of, there's what you may say when the council is determining, it's the final arbiter of determining if a person meets the qualifications.
Well, no, all right, hold on a second.
Well, while you're
Not
looking for
this-
that,
yeah, go ahead.
while you're looking for that, Bruce, one of the things I'll tell you is, for me, like, everything in 313 ultimately comes down to how the town manager decides to go about doing his job. And you're right, there's a lot of ways that can get a little weird when it's no different than having a board of directors with a CEO, right? You got one person reporting to however many others. In my experience, the town manager is expected to know how to handle that one person. And if the town manager has someone doing what this says you shouldn't be doing, it's his or her responsibility to deal with that body, the governing body, and say, I've been contacted, I've had these conversations, and here's where I stand. It has to ultimately come down to the town manager to properly deal with it, because think of it the other way. Let's say you're a councilman and I'm the town manager, and you come to me and you say, "Rylan, I really think we got to get rid of Wade. I mean, he can't put out a campfire." I would say, and if I just went and did it, then it wasn't Bruce telling me to do it. Man, I wanted to get rid of it. You know what I mean? Because the buck ultimately stops. So
But I can tell you, as a CEO of companies, and I'd have a board member coming to me, and all they might say, "You run the company." A board member says, "Hey, I got this person that we really like you to talk to." I mean, they need to come in as maybe one of your officers. It's slippery.
I would add to what Rhylan said.
I mean,
A strong town manager will protect his territory, and he will protect his people, as he should. The town manager that I worked under, a council person did not go talk to the staff without talking to him first. You just did not do that. I would not, the only people that we were allowed to talk to, or that we were supposed to talk to, was the town manager, the town secretary, and the town attorney. That's all we could talk to. We couldn't talk to anybody in the staff without going through the town manager or the town secretary if that was something we needed. And that's the way it should be. And I think most council people respect that.
Well, that's one piece of it. The other piece is, you going to recommend
I
something.
would never, The only time I would, as a council person, would ever recommend somebody is if there was an opening, I would tell the person, go apply for that. I would go to the town manager and say, you need to hire old Dave over there because he's a good guy.
I'm sure that that's never happened here at Trophy Club, that we've had, that.
I'm sure it has, but
I'm sure it has too, okay.
But I know some people that got thrown out of an office too. I mean, as they
Is that the remedy?
You can't control people doing things that they shouldn't be doing. I mean, that's why they have laws. If you could do that, we wouldn't have bank robberies.
I see where you're coming from. In business, I've been in that situation, looking for a technical person, somebody up above comes and say, hire this person who is not trained on that particular item, so then you're sort of stuck, right? What do you do with that?
Well, it's a little bit different in the corporate life. You just do like I used to do. I just say, yes, sir, I'll do that.
They go to
But
where they want to do anything.
in this public life, I think it's pretty clear that what Danny is saying is correct. We need, our elected officials need to stay away from town employees, that they can talk directly to the town manager or the secretary, but they can't, go beyond that, because that's clearly doing something, and making a recommendation from something is almost akin to pressuring the town manager who reports to the council to do what I want you to do, which is very different from the corporate thing.
But it's still the same if you go to the town manager and you say, have you ever thought about this? To me, that's borderline directive.
Well, but your job is
The
also
ideal
to
thing
direct
would be
the
for
town
the
manager.
town manager, the
Let's
ideal
not
thing
get
would be
too-
for the
too
town
mixed up
manager
here.
to come to you, the council member, and say, I would like your
But that's to
assistance.
be as a body as a whole, not as one member going to somebody and saying,
But the body as a whole can direct the town manager, but individually they cannot.
well, that's my point.
Any experienced municipal executive knows the difference between a conversation and direction. And sometimes councils give direction, and sometimes council members have a conversation. So I think that's where you're talking about the slippery slope. I think that's where you have to draw the line, is that, in fact, honestly, if you want my personal opinion, this was probably put into our charter because somewhere along the way, someone was bothering somebody else, and someone had Danny's very strong opinion, which is 98% valid, and so they put it in here. But at the end of the day, you're never going to govern how a council person speaks with a city manager. It's just an impossibility. And further, when you're in the office, part of your responsibility is to have an open line of communication with that individual and make sure that you and that person are on the same page, because it's not easy, as we've all discussed, to report to more than one person. So I don't know if there's a way we can make it better than what's already on paper.
I really think that, I understand where you're coming from, but if a council person is going to do that, then, like you said, it's up to the town manager. If you've got a town manager that's worth his salt, he's going to know whether it's a direct order and you're trying to interfere, or it's just a suggestion for the good of the town, right? I think there's a fine line there, but it's up to the town manager to go and to make the decision. Well, this is out of line. I need to do something about this, and it also relies on the council people to know that there's a certain ethical standard that they can't use.
The mayor, or do I go to the, what's the remedy for this?
I got a suggestion.
This
When
lets
we
me
get to the next section about the council, we can put a rule in there where you can take action against the council person that does that.
Well, let's be clear that the scope of 313 is specifically relating to appointment and removals of employees. So it's very specific to that.
Okay. Anyway, hold on, just for a second.
I'm not trying to jump forward here, but 11.14, it says Code of Ethics and Conduct. It says the town council shall adopt by ordinance a code of ethics and conduct that is consistent with the provisions of this charter. That's where you adopt the remedy.
Right.
Put the violation here, and adopt the remedy and the procedure there.
Bruce, there's also protection for the town manager under section 4.05D. And it, under powers and duties, it specifically spells out that the manager is the only one that has the power to remove somebody from office, or not from office, but from an appointed position.
Wade, has somebody been picking on you?
Well, Bruce is the only one that mentioned, or actually Ryan.
Yeah, I was saying.
Specifically.
Actually, it's Jeff.
Okay.
I knew it.
I'm glad you guys are not here.
I've always thought,
I think 11.14 the establishment of the ethics code and stuff would handle quite a number of that, which is already in here. But once again, we're myopic in Article 3.
and I've always thought that that section was not that bad because it says that a council member cannot direct, but a council member should be able to offer their opinion, you know, to a town manager. Town manager should.
Except that there's a fine line there that we have to be very careful of.
Yeah, but a
Sometimes
town,
I may recommend to my wife something, but she's taking it as, well, I take it as a directive from her.
yeah, but your wife doesn't have 7 people that they answer to, that she
I
answers
hope she
to.
does.
You know what I'm saying? And so to Danny and Rylan's point, the town manager is, if they're worth anything, are gonna, they know that they're not directed by the mayor, they're not directed by any senior council member, they're directed by the body. And so there's got to be a mechanism.
And there's a
where-
lot of protection in the contract as well.
Yes.
Correct.
That addresses these issues, so I don't think that's a basic problem.
Bruce, you gonna go to that? Okay, Tim, what you got?
Well, this may ultimately be a question for the town attorney, but one thing that I was kind of struck by in looking through these articles was that upon the vacancy, particularly of a council member, there wasn't any sort of direction with respect to a short-term vacancy. So just to give you my background, I'm an attorney, and I was originally licensed in Tennessee and been practicing in Indiana for a while, and I've only been here for 3 years. And I'm not really particular to Texas law, but I did in a former life work with towns with respect to boards and things like this. And I recall vividly in Tennessee that there were provisions where, if there was a vacancy within so many months before the next general election, then that position was allowed to remain vacant. And I know that there's been some concern raised by citizens here about the unnecessary need for a special election and the costs associated with that. So is there anything in the Texas Constitution or in the election code?
No, we have wide range here on what we can do as far as how we fill the position. If you wanted to redo this section.
Yeah, but the time though, the 120 days is Texas election law, correct? So that's where we get in trouble.
Okay, that's, bear with me a second. That there has to be an election in 120 days?
It has to be permanently filled.
It has to be permanent, because I'm getting ready to follow up on Tim, and what you're starting to say, is one of my comments is to eliminate it. We have an election every 6 months, November and May.
Oh,
So what's the difference between 120 and 180 days?
I think you want a procedure for filling vacancies.
Right, but
Well,
isn't the 120?
Otherwise, it's,
Well, the other option I have here for discussion purposes, is appointment. But I'm just talking options to throw on the table. But, for example, if to get 120 days, we just had some special elections within a month, you've got, anyway, I'm going to throw that on the table, but does that follow through what you're saying?
It does. And so I was mostly concerned with whether we were restricted by the Constitution or.
there's different days and different numbers for certain things. I think what Ryan was referring to, one of the things is if it's a statutory, if it's a constitutional resignation, resign to run, it says you shall call the election or hold the election in a certain amount of days. If it's just a resignation, a written resignation, like moved out of town or something like that, we can apply whatever is here. And we can set out days and set out a procedure if you like. You can't appoint, I've seen it, a hybrid even, where if there's more than 180 days, or that's just left on the term, it shall be appointed by election. If it's less than 100 days, may be appointed, but that person shall stand election at the next general election. So there's things like that.
Isn't our current one, if you have the vacancy within 120 days of the next election, it can remain vacant, and you don't have to have a special election. Outside of 120 days, you have to have a special election.
Well, let's go back to exactly what it says here.
C and D said 120.
Yeah. If there is a vacancy in the office of mayor, and it repeats itself for council, a new mayor shall, the word shall, not may.
Will.
No, not will, shall be elected by special election within 120 days from such vacancy in accordance with the Constitution of the Texas Electoral.
Okay, that means
it doesn't say that it can just go ahead and be on the next ballot for November. It has to be a special election. So within 120
Not
days.
if it's within 120 days, because it'll be the next, because when I resigned,
But under state law, it's called a special election,
Okay.
even though it happens.
You may
yeah,
have it at the same time.
the election is,
Yeah.
but they didn't have to call a separate election.
Correct. You can have one election, like first Saturday in May, that has one place is a general election, one place is a special.
Yeah.
Right.
But
Yeah.
one election.
Okay, but it's just called, it's, yeah, okay, but you don't have to pay for that special election.
But there's I'm trying to listen for direction. There's a lot of different ways you can go.
Correct.
All right, and I'm throwing it out for general conversation, and hopefully we'll, if you listen to everybody has a different way of putting it. But, Rhylan, you want to continue on what you were, starting to say?
Is that, unless Tim had anything else on the election, do you have anything else on the election part that you want to?
Well, no, I mean,
Express.
now that we know that that
Okay.
is an option, it's nice. I do think we ought to have that discussion.
Yeah, what I would like to see, overall, since we're talking about, David is correct that there's several options, several roads to go down. I personally am categorically against appointments. I think you gotta let the people speak. However, I also would be all in favor of making sure vacancies are filled on May and November uniform election dates, except in cases where state law says we have to do it right away, or before then. If that, just because I think that would be a little bit more reasonable, and it would avoid situations where people are maybe needing to disengage but not resigning until after a certain date, or whatever the case may be. But I don't know. I've never dug into it to see, like Dave made a point about constitutional resignations, where those have a specific statute in the Texas Election Code, and that 120 days is already spelled out.
Just talk about what a constitutional.
Well, if there's a constitution trying to run, you announce for another office more than a year out, and since you've automatically resigned, then the town or county or whatever shall hold the election, or shall hold the election by a certain date.
Yeah, involuntary in some
So
fashion.
in theory, should that constitutional law make section 73027? It says if a member files to become a candidate. Well, if you just announce, the state law says announce.
One says announce, one says file.
Right. Ours is more restrictive, the state is more broad.
But the
State's more restrictive because it takes action whether you file or not.
Well,
the state's law also has a term remaining condition, which ours doesn't. So they really don't. They're not fully overlapping.
Well, let me float this out, and I needed to sit down and work through it. I don't think I have the answer today. If you change 120 to 180,
I wasn't going to use any number. I was going to say for the next May
Uniform election.
but your problem is if someone resigns too close to that May election, and you don't have time on the election code to notice it, and public voting and everything else.
If you do the 180, you're covered.
That's why I'm thinking you might need 200.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying? It's a max calendar thing.
Because you have to back it out,
Well,
at least 6 weeks or something.
Well, you'd have to put
Well,
an
okay,
exception
but
in there
you could-
because you're gonna have things like
If
you're saying,
we
somebody
have a-
resigns the day before the election.
Well, once we pick the dates, there's always games we should.
No, I understand that. And once we get uniformity of opinion up here. Then we put it on our motion and we do some research into it to formulate what can, can't be. Okay? If that way, we're not trying to get you to pinpoint tonight.
I just, man, kind of state my understanding of what y'all are looking at, possibly changing C and D the number of days.
No, okay.
To
Yeah,
a manner.
I don't think we
Well,
heard.
just, can you do it so you just define it as at the next
General
election?
And we'll do whatever the best.
That would be better than days.
Yeah.
But I understand where you're coming from.
Election date.
Pardon?
It may have to be general election day, because we don't have a general election, like we have them. with the
Every May
municipal
is our
elections.
general election.
Yeah.
Our
Well,
general
we got
elections
two
are May.
elections a year, May and November.
To Ryan's point, yes, so if there was a vacancy on council and you're filling it when it's not due for that, there's still time remaining on that term, it's called a special election. The next general election, we already know who those spots are, place 1, 2, and the mayor. That's our general. Anything else that comes up is going to be classified as a special election.
Well, I understand that, it's just that the timing is gonna be the same as the others, so that you don't have to go through the expense.
The key to get where Dave is going is in Texas election law, it uses the phrase uniform election date.
Yes.
So that would be what you're
That's
looking
the
at.
point.
If we
Uniform
have an
election.
election for a council person on a November ballot,
That would be a special.
does that,
But
do we have to pay for a special election?
We would.
So it doesn't really matter.
I'll explain it a little bit. So we share costs,
Yeah, that's
whoever
right.
holds an election.
And I'll tell you what,
Hold on, let Dolly, please, go ahead.
So for May elections, it depends on who's holding an election, you share those costs. November elections, those are kind of iffy, it could be a higher cost. Because every other year, those are constitutional, you're not always guaranteed someone's going to share those costs with you. So most municipalities hold their elections in May.
but it does matter whether or not it is a special election or not, right? Even if we have to pay for the November one. I will tell you, the last go around with all the special elections, I have a couple neighbors that are new to town that just thought we were nuts, quote unquote, right? Well, why, we just went to an election here, now you're doing it again, and next week we're doing it. It was
Well, I think the other
extremely-
part of that is
it
when
was
you do those
extremely
elections like that, you don't get anybody to show up.
Right, that's the other.
You know, you need to do them in May and November when people are used to it, otherwise you're only gonna have 11 people show up if you do it February 2nd.
The other point and I agree with Brad, not really crazy about appointing somebody, but I have been around this town for enough that where I've seen councils go down to, I think we were at 3 at one point in time when we had 5 people on the council, and that makes it extremely difficult for the council to operate.
That's why we get rid of that 4 rule.
Yeah,
No, that's why we keep the forward.
So we have to really put a balance here to.
No, but that, we didn't have to move it.
Three was not going to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on special elections.
I think I understand what you're trying to get to.
I want to echo Rhylan, I am strongly opposed to appointing a council person.
All right, Dave,
What about
Chris?
hypothetically, if it's just a short vacancy of, let's say, less than 6
I
months?
oppose appointing a council person. They need to go, because first of all, even if it's a short period, if they're able to file in the next election, they have a leg up already because they become the incumbent. And that's not fair to the other people, and it ends up being a person of the majority of the council. It's not necessarily based on qualifications or anything else. That's an elected position, and I think it needs to be an elected position.
I will say Tuesday, this was brought up by the mayor, and while we didn't take a vote, most on the council did not agree with the appointment.
There was a difference of opinion discussed. Okay, on this one subject, I'm going to come back to you, Tim, for your last, but just the part about C and D changing 120 days to May, November, and the wording to be determined. Dave, your comments?
I just favor that as a simplicity matter. It's a lot easier to market if you just got these 2 things that people got to remember.
I don't want another 2019.
Bruce?
I agree.
Okay? Has everybody had a good say on it?
Totally agree with that.
Okay.
Yeah, do we say probably language next uniform election date? Is that the term?
To be determined.
Yes, that's what I'm looking at.
I support
The
that.
gray area I want to look at is if someone resigns the last week in April, and you can't have that election.
After the date of the ballot set.
Yeah.
I think is what you're trying to say.
I'm just saying, as is consistent with all election laws.
What's the election law on filing? Like how many days before election?
General election, that's laid out, and special election, it depends on how to run into it. There's 2 filing periods for special elections, depends on when you call it, but general election, that starts,
Counts back from.
yeah.
It's all governed by state law, though.
It is, yeah.
Like 90 days or something? Or?
As long as that's, so like the last day for filing is gonna be February 14th, but I haven't counted back how many days that is. It's state law.
Okay.
Yeah, how many days
So I
before the
guess
election.
you got-
You get a little wiggle room with the special election sometimes, right? A
Yeah.
little bit less sometimes. That's why I think if I say as allowed by state law, or as is consistent with state election law, that we can incorporate that into the calculation.
So in theory, if February 24th is the cutoff date to file, let's say someone resigns in March.
Then you'd have to move to November.
Okay.
Possibly, yeah.
Yeah, that would be great. That would,
Yeah. That was the gray area I was worried
And that would be great, especially if we limit from 4 to a majority in quorum. I'm with you, Dave.
Okay. Is everybody's had to say? All right, Tim, you want to add any other items? You want to spill yours?
No, the only other main comments was the gender neutral language. But if it can't be done by way of one proposition that sort of applies broad scale throughout the document, I'm not sure it's worth the time and effort.
Yeah, I'm gonna look into doing it, just scribble here without any problems.
Okay. All right. Dave, have we covered you for anything you've got?
Well, I got 2 or 3 things I'd like to discuss if I can.
Yep, sure.
The first of those is 3.04B and a statement under paragraph number 4. It says here, the council shall by an affirmative 3/4 vote of the entire membership, the word I'm focusing on is entire, be the judge in matters involving forfeiture of office. Does the member who is forfeiting office, is he a voter? Because it clearly says later on, if he does all these bad things, moral bad stuff, then he's immediately thrown out. But it doesn't say that up above, so it says by a 3/4 vote of the entire membership, be the judge in matters.
I assume so.
Yeah.
What if it was a contentious, that
So
would
he gets the
provide
vote.
for if it was a contentious matter, maybe, I would assume so.
But he gets the vote. That's all. I just wanted clarification on that.
That's how I read it.
I would like to consider eliminating items 308I and 308K.
All right, let's take I first.
Okay? I says adopt, modify, and carry out plans proposed by the town Planning and Zoning Commission for clearance of slum districts and rehabilitation of blighted areas. We don't have either of those, and it is highly unlikely that we will ever have either of those. So this word just seems to be filling up space.
Can I say something on that?
Go ahead.
I agree, we don't have that, but I do believe that planning and zoning would be, it would be nice if P and Z could propose and bring to the council as part of the town becoming older and longer in the tooth over on the east side, some urban renewal for some urban rejuvenation opportunities, whether it be in tax credits or something, for people to have an opportunity to maybe bring up some of those older homes over there. We have a great town with a,
There may be an opportunity for that somewhere in the future. Now, I can tell you, you know this as well as I do from going in these houses and what people are putting into these houses and investments today is incredible. You're talking about $40,000 kitchens and, you know, things like that. I don't, in our community, because of the general location and all the rest of it, I don't see that as high risk, but that's a separate, I think that's a separate issue and not really related to this whole issue of slum districts and blighted areas.
I agree.
And I think it's just wasted words.
all right, we got you.
Yeah, you know what, Dave, that's a good point, because, you know, David, my thinking is this doesn't limit or grant anything that state law doesn't already cover.
P and Z can do it regardless of this.
And council, obviously.
Right.
So in terms of looking for things to clean up and make look neat, I think I would agree with what Dave's saying.
Okay. Any comments on deleting on number I? All right, nope, you're
I
second.
would like to delete item number K.
All right, your reasoning?
It is, well, first of all, it's not something that we can
Yeah.
control, and we can't even find the people that are doing it. So there's no sense in having a ordinance that you can't use.
This is a pre-Uber ordinance.
This talks about, you know, transporting people and things like that, and you can't find those people, and most of them are regulated by somebody else. And they will use our space, but they use our space for their customer, and we can't find them and charge them, so this is just a waste of words.
Would this be no different, though, than our trash delivery service, right? Where we can charge them a franchise fee?
No, I think that's a whole different thing. We'll talk about that hopefully in a minute.
Okay.
All right,
I
is
just
this,
something similar for,
would this cover anything in the future, roller skates, skateboards, what bicycles, rentals and stuff like that you currently have around at Dallas?
Well, maybe a rickshaw.
It wouldn't,
Well, I'm just,
but this is another thing that it would not, it's one of those things that it's already under the purview of the municipality to regulate these things, so it's why is it in the
It doesn't
charter?
add or create any power.
Right, we've got a lot of things in our charter that
Off
don't
the
need
top of
to
my
be in
head,
the
what
charter.
to cover is, I need to research the Uber side of it. Cab licenses. It could be broad enough to include like party buses or things like that.
Right, but we as a municipality would still have the ability to take whatever necessary action
Correct.
or inaction. It's just there's a thing here in the charter that maybe is not necessarily all that valuable.
Wouldn't this be best done by ordinance anyhow?
Right.
Yes.
You know, I mean, when I went through this, I didn't know we don't need this or anything like that. I just made comments, but as you fellows are talking here, right, I agree with Dave. I mean, you know, a lot of stuff we could just pass an ordinance for. You know, we really don't need to have it in the charter.
And this is part of what this is saying is this is specifying to the governing body that they should do what you just described, Lou. So it's kind of like it's just duplicitous.
okay.
So do we take this to the citizens? We're going to shorten this from 48 pages to 40?
Yeah,
Not with this.
47 and a half.
well, that's,
The
That's a good selling point.
other one I want on this same paragraph is item number M. And basically, this appears to be in conflict with the municipal utility district responsibility. And so I am not sure that this should be here. And I guess my other thing that I want to say is that I think there's a $15 million outstanding debt paid off in 2035 that we need to absorb the mud. Go
well,
ahead, Danny, I'm sorry.
no, I'm Chairman, I got the floor. We're going this way, Danny, just back off. First of all, I'm not in favor of eliminating the mud. So just let you know about that. I grew up with muds. I developed in Houston with muds. I understand them. The other is this does provide the council, if they were to do something with the mud or do something with the sanitary sewer or another development like the pit, it gives them that authority to do it. The other thing is it does give them the authority to enforce it. So that, give you an example, okay? If this town ever decides to require those waste cans out on the curb, well, shit, I'm taking mine down to the dumpster. I ain't doing it. Okay, and I ain't paying for it. So this, by the way, I read it. It does have in here that they can fine me for that.
Yep.
Okay. So
Are you talking about that discussion we had before, under the previous mayor, when they wanted to have us put those carts out there?
Absolutely.
Because the garbage company bought all those fancy trucks, and they needed to...
And I looked in here to see if they required a sidewalk on my lot too. But anyway, this does have some implications further down the road that I recommend leaving it in here. If it's innocuous at this time, it may have a future action needed.
But we don't,
I think it stays. I think that what it does is, it says provide for it. Like, the mud's doing it, so it's being provided for. But it gives the town, if there is another major glitch, right? It gives the town the ability to step in if you would, or it just gives them some flexibility here, right? Because it says they're responsible for doing that according to the charter.
Okay, we're going around the court.
Can't do away with them because the town actually does provide the sanitary sewer and water system in the pit. That's owned by the town. It's contracted out to the mayor. But the town owns that. And those of us that live in the pit are still paying for that. We have a bond that we pay off through that. The mud will eventually go away because as long as a mud can only exist as long as there's debt. And once those bonds are paid off, it only takes a vote of the council to absorb the mud.
But that's 2035.
Well, except that you have a mud board now that's trying to pull all of those forward and get them paid off early.
Okay.
And
Yeah, my only concern
I would love to see the mud, absolutely. But Dennis and I are in total disagreement on this. I think the mud needs to go away and we need to be a full-service city.
I agree. You don't need two elected governments to run.
The only reason that the mud that I'm not saying this would be Dennis, but the only reason that some people want the mud to exist is to continue taxing Westlake property that doesn't receive anything from the town or from the mud.
I guess that the confusing part of this sentence for me is just that it says, provide for a sanitary sewer and water system. That's a pretty universal comment in the town charter. And the town really doesn't have that responsibility.
Yes.
Except in some of thing like this.
And when the mud goes away, then that will be their responsibility.
And then we need that in the charter.
But you need it now because they provide it in the pit.
Well, then it ought to say, provide for sanitary sewer and water system in the pit.
Well, there's another thing that's just my opinion that the town ought to look at, and I think that would be almost a unanimous yes vote, and that is for the whole town to absorb that debt and get rid of the darn thing from an entity standpoint, and you pay like everybody else does, no fees or anything, and stuff like that.
I don't think the town,
my loose opinion.
I believe under state law.
Let's get off the mud for a second. I'd love to continue that. Stop. Let's get off the mud. Let's stay right here.
But I think that is, and always has been, one of the responsibilities of the town. Just so happens the mud was there, right? And
muds are supposed to go away. That's what it says in the mud documents. It says they go away.
Dennis, you lost control.
I know. All right. Enough on the mud.
Like you said.
All right, Garrett, we're down to you. Any comments or on number M?
He just gave you a huge compliment and accidentally called you Garrett. Hey,
I apologize.
That's as big a compliment as you give somebody in this building.
Wording here bigger.
No, I think leave it in just because, legally the town does provide this for the pit. And if we try to get very granular, there's no reason to get specific when the council already has the ability to create ordinances and different things.
Okay, so we got everybody covered. Any other items, Dave?
I quit.
No,
I got beat up so bad on that last one.
no.
I can't stand any more bruises.
No. Maybe we can get a water bill from the city versus.
It's good to use the thing.
Well,
All right, Ryan, did you have any other item on this before I have my second?
No, sir.
All right. So I have 308I delete not necessary, K delete not necessary. I want to bring up, let's see, we've talked about the vote, we've talked about the May elections. I have 306. Does the mayor need to vote? 3.06. On the 3 or 4 lines down, he said they, in 2009, I believe they gave them the right to vote.
Yes.
Now, that was at a time when we had 5 people as a council, and we now have 6, and who knows if that'll ever change or whatever, but do we need it, except for in cases of ties? Does he need to vote?
Yes.
I agree. Yep.
I'm in favor of the mayor voting yes.
Yeah, I would say for a lot of the same reasons that Dave mentioned why he was uncomfortable with too much abstention is that I think it's good for the mayor to be able to or to be required to put a stake in the ground just like everybody else.
Hey, Phil, what do you think?
Well, I disagree with all of you.
Okay.
I like the mayor not voting, but that's just.
Okay.
What do we think the citizens would vote?
Well, they overwhelmingly approved it last time.
Yeah, they did. They gave the vote. The, all right, 308U, we've been on 308, where it gives the extraordinary and total executive powers to the mayor. Is there a definition of a major public disaster?
Yes, by the state of Texas,
There is?
it does a disaster, yes, sir. It
Okay,
defines
got it.
disaster.
All right. So he just can't just,
That's right.
that's,
You can't say a tree fell over, it's a disaster, like they don't know about. Yeah.
okay. Have I missed anybody going around the table asking them for input on items to be discussed? All right, then we have gone through Article 3. Now, before we go any further, I just want to see if, go through my notes for a second and help me correct. We discussed number 305, compensation, and there was discussion on that. We discussed 3.20B, abstention, meaning take out that item, meaning it's not necessary, and it should be part of the council rules and procedures. We discussed 3.19 quorum, and delete the word for to make a quorum was discussed pretty heavily. We discussed adding a gender-neutral phrase in the beginning of the document, and I'm picking up on what you were saying. Or discuss what you were saying, Dave, that, hey, let me see if it's, yeah.
We're not changing any substance.
Right. Then on 304 C and D, we discussed the motive of the theory is to eliminate special elections and the cost. That's where we're all coming from. So to change the 120 days to May and November election. However the wording is, and if we need to add numbers in there so that we cover the timeline to get on the ballot.
Except I don't think we eliminate cost, if I understood Holly right. If we do November election, we don't eliminate cost, right?
That's true.
You have a better chance at eliminating it.
All we do is make it where all the voters are already coming out.
All right. Then what I'd like to do is, I made a note of here for myself that, and that Dave Dodd needs to research some laws and some specificity. And Holly, I'd like you to outline the cost of a November election, or just look at it again, okay, and for another meeting.
Okay, I can give you all estimates because it depends on who's holding the election. I can't tell you.
Well, okay, for discussion purposes, I'm not trying to blindside you, but that's, we need to have that type of information, okay?
Basically, correct me if I'm wrong on how my high level understanding of this is, Holly, but obviously there's always a municipal election in there.
Yes.
So that's off the table. Now, even years of November, there's potential for defraying the cost.
Right.
Correct. And odd years in November, chances are it's going to all fall on the town.
Right.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Then on 308I, delete is not necessary. 308K, delete is not necessary. Those are my notes. Now, we talked about some other things, but I didn't see a consensus to make a...
I just want to ask one question again.
Go ahead.
It's on verbiage on item 316B. This says very clearly, every ordinance, resolution, or motion shall require on passage the affirmative vote of 4 or more members of the council unless more is required by state law. President, how many to remove it? Should it also say that the same thing applies to remove an ordinance from the?
Removal usually results in an ordinance repealing a prior ordinance, so you're approving one to remove another.
An ordinance doesn't repeal itself. An ordinance can repeal something.
Right.
So it's still an ordinance.
So you're still approving ordinance A.
Whether you're adding or repealing.
To repeal.
Oh, so it's just.
It's all legal.
Okay.
Yeah.
I got you. I just wanted to make sure that I understood how you got rid of things as opposed to getting things.
Right. And thinking of that one 316B, which you just mentioned, there's something in there, all persons interested in shall have the opportunity to be heard, all right? As we discussed last time, there is a new state law that mandates that.
Yep.
And it's several places in here it talks about that. So we're just complying with the law.
But the town has always complied with that.
No, the town's always wanted to comply with that. I've been in many meetings where people have been shut down.
Really?
Absolutely. Okay. Did I miss something? Did somebody want to add something?
Do we, just make sure on the quorum definition, 312, and then that section 316.4.
That would need attention if you were going to look at that item. That would need
Well, that was partly one of the things that Lou had mentioned is if you change the wording in one place, you have to then analyze to see if whatever else needs to be changed to comply. For example, if you eliminate the 120 days, okay, then you also have to get that part about the mayor pro tem's got to fill in if the mayor's not around because of that. You have to have the multiple variances occur because of 3.0312 gets involved. And so there's other, you got to go through the whole document and look to see what other things would be. That's why I'm trying to stay now as general rules, all right? We want to work on quorum. Now, and once we get through the whole document, we have our list, and then we have to go through and see.
We
what
just change it to quorum.
Dennis,
Oh.
I'm going to shut up after this, I promise.
No, you don't. Well,
But my notes, I can't keep up. I got notes on all these pages and I can't keep up with them. The very last item in paragraph 3, term limits. I'm opposed to term limits, but I know it's a popular subject, but I guess the question is, what's the purpose of term limits? And my issue is, and the reason I'm opposed to it, because it takes away my right to vote for an individual. And I know the history of term limits. It goes back as long as the United States, back to the very beginning of the country. And it has a role in large elections, in state and federal elections, and it has that role because of the value of the name and the value of big money. In a small community like this, I am not sure I understand the value of term limits, and like I said, I oppose them because they take away my ability to vote for the person I want.
Rhylan can talk to this.
I haven't taken a lot of losses in the last 7 years, but trying to get rid of term limits was one of them, on the same principles that Dave pointed out. And I actually spearheaded the effort to place that on the charter amendment, as a charter amendment on the ballot while on council in 2015 for the exact reasons you said. And one of my driving factors in asking to do that, and council went along with it, was there was a lot of talk about folks that were more active than I was in town in 2009 when it was first approved, relative to general public's view of government at the time. And well, maybe was that a product of the zeitgeist in terms of national politics and things? So having, at that time, I was on council, I had run, I had whatever. And so I thought, let's just see. And the margin was greater in 2015 than in 2009. So I felt like I kind of got the message.
It kind of came into play as a bundle with the whole thing about longer terms and a bunch of things like that. And there was a bunch of talk about state laws and all these kind of things, that if you had to have positions, you had to have all these things, with all these, which included term limits. And like I said, I agree, I know the history, and I don't think it'll pass, but I am opposed to.
Well, one of the things is you talked about the climate, political climate, right? People's thinking about term limits. You're right, Dave. I think it's worse than it was in 2015. I don't think we'll get. Well, although we may
There's so much talk about it on the federal level.
Yeah.
Everybody
It's
gets in their head.
going to roll over.
I would define we before you include me in there.
I would say whether you support or whether you oppose term limits, we're going to ask for a pretty long list of things. If you know something is not going to pass,
Don't get it in there and
don't get
about
it in there, because we're going to have enough real things to ask them to look at.
Yep, agreed.
Yeah, I would just say if we're not going to fill vacancies, I think we should try to change the definition of quorum to a majority, as Danny alluded to it earlier. Just because, again, there could be scenarios where people are vacationing or whatever, and we need an important decision to be voted on, and there's only, let's say, 4 people in attendance, and 1 person can be against.
What's your comment on term limits?
It's my father was a politician in Arkansas, and they passed a constitutional amendment to put in term limits. But at the national level, the court ruled it unconstitutional because of U.S. senators and representatives, their seniority in those committees that they have. So one state would be under a disadvantage. At the local level, I think that people, they only want you in there 6 years, and so be it. So I would not recommend us trying to get rid of term limits.
Some of us didn't make it to 6 anyway.
Tim? Bruce?
I agree.
All right, my issue on term limits is what small percentage of people vote?
Well, they look not too far off the national average, both from the age of voters.
Well, it doesn't matter, the national average or whatever. Okay, so I'm gonna scratch term limits off my sheet here. Okay.
Well, that's what I've
No, I'm going on what everybody said.
I talk to people about it, I get the same response.
Okay, okay.
Before we completely move on from this, I do want to add a little thought as far as the tying majority of a quorum to pass an affirmative vote or whatever. We're going to need to dig really deep into all the different areas where things, whether it's council rules of procedure or ordinances or whatever.
Majorities, and whether it's a percentage of the body or percentage present.
Right. Yeah.
A lot of times when it says percentage of the body, it doesn't matter how many people are there.
Sure. Well, later on at another meeting, we'll have time to define these items, and we'll have more in-depth discussion. And we'll also give staff the ability to do their research so we could have a full discussion on it. All right. Would anybody like to make a motion?
I make a motion we adjourn.
No, not yet. We've still got another. All right, I'm going to make a motion that we consider on the Article 3 for discussion and further discussion. 3.05 compensation, 320B abstention, 319 quorum, add a gender neutral phrase at the beginning or satisfy that issue. 304 C and D change the timing, and 308 I delete and K delete. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Patrick, second. All those in favor, raise your hand. Unanimous. All right. Moving right along to number 7.
Can we take a 5-minute break?
5-minute break.
We'll be out in 5 minutes.
Go right to adjourn.
You think?
Yeah, this is just calendar.
Okay. All right. No. All right. Forget the 5-minute break.
All right.
The agenda item number 7: discussion and take appropriate action regarding future agendas. All I wanted to hear is, in this last item, we're going to put in the future discussion of previous meetings so that we can rediscuss something or add to something or whatever. This is this is what you're expecting the next few times out on the next few meetings that we discussed. We've already set the meetings. Okay. This is a discussion item only. And if no one else wants to discuss that, I will hear a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
All unanimous. Thank you.